If anybody doesn't want to be seen, please turn your video off. If you uh, don't want your name shown, just change your name. It's not, not an issue. Just, go blank. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. So I'm going to make a start now by showing a PowerPoint presentation. Okay. Sorry, just letting a few more people in. So, just to let you know who we are, this is the Incredible Seed Library. We are big believers in open pollinated seed, and we give it away for free. This is the point of the seed library, to share the seed for free. Okay. Sorry, I'm Marie's supposed to be letting people in, but for some reason she's having trouble getting in. So I'm having to do it all. So it's a little bit jumpy at the moment. So sorry about that. But we'll get going in a minute properly when everybody's here. But as I said, this is the Incredible Seed Library. We're part of Incredible Edible Carmarthenshire. And Incredible Edible Carmarthenshire is an organisation that is designed to help people to grow food in the public arena. Can you put yourself on mute, please, Marie, because we've got a bit of a feedback loop there. Thank you. Hello, Marie. Well done. You've got there in the end. I've never known anyone have as much trouble as you getting onto a Zoom. Honestly, really, what are you like? Okay, so in this particular course, we'll be looking at annual vegetables and how to save the seed of annual vegetables, easy annual vegetables, as well as some of the slightly more complicated techniques. So this is the introductory seed saving course, and we're looking at open pollinated seed. So what is open pollinated seed? These are seeds that are naturally pollinated by insects or wind, or self-pollinated, and not in forced pollination or inbreeding. So that would be F1 hybrids or GM seed. It contributes to food plant biodiversity. And one of the big problems is that over the last century, we have lost about 80% of our food biodiversity. So this is a really major issue, and it's one of the things that we need to be looking at as small growers, because we can have a major impact on this. These sorts of seeds, open pollinated seeds, are adaptable. They're genetically slightly variable. And the thing about that is that they are able to adapt to climate change, to particular landscapes, and to environmental conditions, and evolve along with them. For instance, this year I grew 17 Gardener's Ecstasy tomato seeds. And I unfortunately lost 7 to a late frost. Now, we've had a particularly cold year this year, but those 7 that I lost were very susceptible to the cold, and the 10 that I didn't lose were not so susceptible to the cold. So the seed that I saved from those plants that are still growing will be adapted a little bit more to the cold. And this is how our open pollinated seed works. It adapts slowly to the cold. Open pollinated seed can be saved by farmers, market gardeners, home gardeners, allotment holders. It will breed true to type plants, resembling the parent plants, unlike F1 hybrids, which of course could be anything. And so you can use it to help develop local varieties. These are all non-GM, non-hybrid, and non-patented. So it means that we as individuals can save seed and give it away to other people. So the second thing that we need to look at is careful observation. And this is something I will be referring to again and again throughout this presentation, because actually careful observation is how we can make sure that the seed that we're saving is true to type and viable. So seed saving requires that you look at how the plants grow, where they grow best, what is their life cycle. How closely does each plant resemble the norm in each variety, and the need to rogue out non-typical plants. So this is a type of tomato that I really, really like. This is an orange banana tomato, called an orange banana tomato because of the shape, not because of the taste or anything like that. Now, I love this variety. For me, it has a fantastic balance of sweetness and acidity, and it suits me really, really well. But it might not suit you. You might not like it. You might like a different variety. And that is the point, to grow varieties that you like. And there are such a wide set load of tomatoes. It's loads and loads and loads, as we will see later. So plant biology, you need to know what about the variety that you're growing to grow it from seed. What is its usual cultural requirements? How would you grow it if you were going to just eat it? How does it pollinate? We'll be looking at these later. What species is it? Is it an annual or a biannual? What's its life cycle? And what characteristics should it have? So in this you need to refer to its original to the original species. So how does it pollinate? So there's three sorts of pollination. There's self-pollination, there's insect pollinated, but some of those are also self-pollinated, as chilies are. And then there's wind pollinated, like sweet corn. Self-pollinated, they just kind of like, you don't have to have a huge distance between different varieties, because they pollinate often before the flowers even open. Insect pollinated, like a chili, can also self-pollinate. Some can also self-pollinate. In that circumstance, you need to isolate the flowers from insects to ensure that their self-pollination happens. But for wind-pollinated plants, this can be a serious problem, because the wind will blow the pollen from sweet corn or maize, which it will also cross with, for miles and miles and miles. Somebody said to me the other day it was 24 miles, but normally it's recognised as being 2 miles. You shouldn't grow sweet corn within 2 miles of anybody else growing sweet corn. So let's have a quick look at what will cross. So this is actually looking at cucumbers. So you've got the plant family and you've got the genus, Cucumis. So Cucumis is the first word in a Latin name, and the species is the second word in the Latin name. The variety is usually added on the end. So this is Cucumis sativa marketmore. This is a variety of cucumber called marketmore. But the really key word is sativa, because that is the species name, and only plants of the same species will cross. So you can look at this. We have here Aztec broccoli and magenta spreen. So these are both of the Chenopodium family. Horizontal, which is Aztec broccoli, you can see is a different colour completely to the magenta spreen or tree spinach. But you can also see that the second name in their Latin name is different. This means that the species will not cross. Now, I asked about this particularly. I asked Sue Stickland, and she sent me some information from the Heritage Seed Library, which I have included in the pack that I will be sending to you after. But this is, these two will not cross. Now, I grew Aztec broccoli last year, grew loads of seeds, saved loads of seeds. I have a nice jar full of seeds, been giving it out to people all over the place. But I'd never grown magenta spreen before. And somebody gave me 2 packets. One was a packet that was an old packet of seeds that they'd saved, and the other was a packet of seeds that they weren't sure if dried properly. And so I decided I wouldn't put them in the seed library this year, as I couldn't be sure of them, so I would grow them on. And I am growing them on, and although there was a bit of a problem with germination, they all have, they have germinated, and I am growing them on. And I can grow both of these in my garden without worrying about them crossing. So next year, in the seed library, will be some magenta spreen. So here you can see this is a way of preventing outcrossing. So you can isolate by distance. You've got inbreeders and outbreeders. Inbreeders are mostly self-pollinate, and outbreeders mostly cross-pollinate. And you can see that I'm not really saying anything particularly totally definite here. Things are a little bit flexible when it comes to the natural world. So in the next row down, you can see that we've got peas on the left-hand side. They only need about 4 or 5 foot between different varieties to ensure that they won't cross-pollinate. Lettuce needs a little bit more, tomatoes the same. Peppers are a slightly different issue, and we'll be looking at those later, as we will at squash. And brassicas, they're a biennial. We'll look at those in a different course. Umbifillas, again, this is parsnips and carrots. Again, we'll be looking at those in a different course. And sweet corn, of course, is a huge, 1+ miles, loads and loads of distance. So you can isolate things physically by using a polytunnel or by growing a tall crop between species. Doesn't work with sweet corn, of course, because it's wind pollinated, but between insect pollinated plants. You can also use the plants in the center of a block. So if you grow your plants in a block, the insects come from outside. They might have pollen from a different plant, but then they will reach the plants on the outside of the block first. They'll pollinate those. They'll drop off the pollen that they have, and they will pick up some fresh pollen from those. And when they move to the center of the block, they will pollinate with the pollen from your particular plants. And so if you only save the seed from the center of a block, you'll be fine. You can also isolate by time. Some varieties flower and crop earlier than others, and you can bring things on earlier with a propagator or a greenhouse. And we'll also be looking at isolation bags and cages a bit later. You need to rogue seeds throughout the growing period, keeping the species typical. Okay. Somebody's just unmuted. Could you just mute for a minute? I will open up for Q&As before we move on to a bit more detail. So as long as you could all stay muted, that would be great. You can see here, if you look just there, there's a tiny little seedling there. All the rest have grown much bigger, but that's a really late, small one. And so I rogued that one out because I don't want that one to grow and flower and pollinate with the rest of the peas. And if you look at this tray, these are flashy lightning lettuce. And you can see that there are some that are very, very pale. Now, these might darken up later on, but actually they're not typical of the rest of them. And so those ones I would rogue out. I would actually just take them out. So this is useful information for seed savers, and you'll be receiving a pile of information by email at the end of this course, tomorrow probably. How many plants do you need to grow for the genetic diversity of that particular plant? And that varies according to the type of plant. What is the viable lifetime of different seeds? And that allows you to grow one sort of lettuce one year and another sort of lettuce another year. You don't have to grow everything every year. This is a really key bit of information. Make sure that you keep your seeds labeled throughout the process. I'm sure I'm guilty. I am guilty. I have things that I haven't got a label on. But if you don't label things properly, then you don't know what you're growing. And if you're just growing it for yourself and going to eat it, that's not a problem. But if you're going to be saving seeds for yourself or to share, then it does become a bit of a problem. We'll also be looking at winnowing seeds, the dry, physical and wet processes, and also how to dry your seed properly. Okay, so before we move on to any specifics, has anybody got anything that they'd like to ask, any questions? Please unmute yourself and ask any question you'd like to.
Are we going to get a copy of this PowerPoint?
You will get a link to the recording that I'm making of this meeting.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
You won't have a copy of the PowerPoint, but you will be able to go through this meeting again to see all the details that we're going through. Okay,
thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. So we're going to look now at a number of different types of easy to save seeds and look at the information that we need to understand how to save these seeds. Okay, so lettuce. So all lettuce have the same Latin name. So they will all have the ability to crossbreed. But most lettuce actually self-pollinates. This means that it flowers and pollinates itself inside the flower before the flower opens frequently. So as long as you grow them a couple of meters apart, or you separate each variety with a tall crop, then you should be okay. Start with 10 plants to allow for losses. You might have some that are not growing true to seed. You might have some that are prone to disease. I have foxes in my garden, so occasionally the foxes decide to play and trash a whole bed. You know, you never know what is going to happen. So you just, grow as many as you can and hope for the best. On the left-hand side here, you can see this is a cos lettuce. I grow cos lettuce in the greenhouse over winter, and I saved 4 of the most typical of those cos lettuce for using for seed. And the rest I just ate over the winter. I picked odd leaves and then finally cropped the last of them a little while ago. And I'm keeping 4 plants in the greenhouse to go to seed, to save the seed for next year. And you can see here that you need to save the seed from 3 to 5 plants to maintain the genetic diversity. Start your plants early. I start mine in little modules. So I usually put 2 seeds to a module and then I thin one out. I don't grow 2 in a module. I just grow the 1 in a module to get a good strong plant. And then I've got 12 in that little set of modules. I've got 12 plants, which allows me, I've had my first roguing when I've been pulling out the little seedlings. And then I've got another roguing that I can do before I plant them out. But the thing is that you can eat anything that doesn't look like it's growing to the same, that doesn't look the same as the rest of the plants. You can eat it, it's fine. It's just you don't want to save seeds from it. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that this is lettuce seed that's ready to harvest. So we looked at these a little bit earlier. Aztec broccoli and magenta spree. It's easy to save, it's wind pollinated, but as these 2 species do not cross, and they're both a very unusual type of plant, there is nothing that will cross with them. So just bring them on early in modules to allow the seed time to germinate and grow. But these are big plants. These are really big plants. They'll grow 4 foot high and about 2.5, 3 foot wide. So I usually grow a block of 12 that are 3 by 4 in my garden. You can grow these in your flower garden. They're absolutely fine in your flower garden, and actually the Aztec broccoli, the leaves go a beautiful red colour in the autumn when the cold snap hits. So it's really lovely. Let the plants grow, and you can harvest. You can harvest some of these completely, and some you can just have a little light harvest of, but let the rest go to seed. Now, I had 7 plants that I let go to seed last year. And once they'd gone to seed and the seed heads had gone a parchment colour, I cut off the seed heads, and I stored them in a cardboard carrier bag. And I'll talk about harvesting the seeds and what we do in a little while when we look at harvesting dry seeds. But 7 plants. I saved a jar, about 2/3 of a jam jar full of seeds from 7 plants. So there's lots and lots of seeds in these plants. So here we're looking at broad beans. Broad beans will cross with other varieties of broad beans. So on the right hand side here there is a variety called aquadulce, and on the left hand side we've got crimson flowered broad beans. Now I've grown crimson flowered broad beans before, and also aquadulce, because that's an overwintering variety. But there's a few things that you need to take on board. They will cross with each other, and you don't want that to happen. So what you need to do is isolate one of the varieties or both of the varieties, okay? And you exclude insects by carefully covering it with fleece right over the top, and then the fleece held down with soil on top of the edges of the fleece all the way around. Now you can see these are really well staked, and they need to be, because broad beans are heavy plants that will fall quite easily. These are insect pollinated but can be self-pollinated, hence we can in fact exclude insects with the fleece, and they will self-pollinate. Oh, Victoria's having real trouble getting in. Okay, so broad beans are outbreeders. So remember that little timeline that we saw? That had beans in the middle of it, and so rather than having just a few, what we really need is a minimum of 24 plants to maintain genetic diversity. And also we need to allow for roguing. Marie, I'm just going to, oh no, I can't do it. I was going to try and put you in, because Victoria, I can't get Victoria into the meeting. She just keeps on flashing up, so I'm not concentrating on the PowerPoint. But sorry, I can't make you co-host at the moment. Hey ho, the little things, eh? Right.
Maggie, do you need to just stop sharing the screen momentarily to make me co-host?
Yeah. I think she's stopped trying to get in now. Hang on, let me just okay, I've just made you co-host. So you should be able to see people coming in. Okay. Sorry about that, people. Okay. So French beans and climbing French beans, you can see that these all have the same name, okay? They're all vulgaris, all right? This means that they could cross-pollinate. But as long as you grow different varieties at a distance, they are mostly self-pollinating, and so that distance will ensure that they are fine. So some French beans small dwarf French beans, you can just grow without any supports at all, and grow different varieties 12 foot apart to be sure that they don't cross-pollinate. You can also separate by time. So the centre picture is a variety called Cherokee Trail of Tears. This is really early flowering. Mine are almost in flower now. I saw the first buds on mine today. And so these can be separated by time as well as distance. Mine are still actually in their modules. I've been waiting to plant them out. But I've also got some Belotti beans, Maggie's Belotti beans. This is a variety that I was given years ago, and it was an unnamed variety. And so we've just called it, for the seed library, we've called it Maggie's Belotti bean, because we have some other different types of Belotti bean. This is really late flowering. And as long as you use careful observation, you see, I told you we'd be bringing this up again, we can ensure that it's not in flower at the same time as the Cherokee Trail of Tears, even if they're closer than 12 foot. Although I must say that I always grow them at least 12 foot apart. So the other variety, Cochineus, is actually runner beans. And these are really promiscuous. They are actually pollinated by insects landing on the lip of the flower and then pollinating the pollen that drops down on them. But they're really promiscuous and they're very, very difficult to save seed. So for the moment, looking just at easy plants, we're just looking at French beans and climbing French beans. Peas. Such a huge variety of peas. Sugar snaps, ones too, garden peas, field peas, peas for drying, loads of different sorts. Okay. Can you let Victoria in, please, Marie? Heritage varieties are different. They exhibit different characteristics from your regular peas that you kind of buy, just, peas that you get in from the garden centre, packets of peas. Those tend to be the sort of pea that would be grown by farmers. They're all very, very uniform. They all flower at the same time. They all pod at the same time. And this means that you have a very short window of harvest. Whereas when you look at heritage varieties, they exhibit a load of different characteristics. First of all, visually, some are tall, some have coloured flowers, the pods might be different colours, but the good thing about them is that they grow over a period of time, so they have a long cropping season, and that allows us to harvest the seeds over a period of time. Mice and birds are a big problem, and I have had a massive problem with mice this year, I must admit. I was given 18 seeds of a particular variety of yellow podded mange 2, and I had them in my greenhouse, and a mouse got at them. And out of those 18 seeds, I have 2 plants left. And you can see that actually what I need to grow is 10 plants for genetic diversity. So in fact, it's not worth my while saving seed from those, because I cannot guarantee the genetic diversity. But peas are easy to save seeds from, and you can save seeds from quite a lot of varieties. You only really need to isolate varieties by 1 metre, and preferably 2, just to be absolutely sure. But you can grow a number of different varieties in your garden, and as long as you isolate them by a bit of space, they will not cross-pollinate. So what a gorgeous picture that is, eh? All these different varieties of tomatoes that you can get. Hence, I said earlier on, choose one that you like. I always experiment with a few every year, but I always grow some that I have grown before. Most tomatoes do not cross-pollinate, and the stigma stays within the flower along with the antlers. And if you look on the right-hand side of the screen there, you can see there's a little cone of anthers there, and the stigma, which is the female part of the flower, is tucked right inside, okay? And so right inside here. So it is only pollinated by the anthers that are surrounding it. So that's the male parts are pollinating the female part, which is tucked inside. It's not true of every type of tomato. Potato leaf tomatoes, currant tomatoes, and the early flowers of beefsteak tomatoes are slightly different. Later beefsteak tomatoes are fine. Careful observation to ensure that this is the case. But if you look at this little inset here, you can see that the stigma is sticking out here from these anthers. And so this is available for cross-pollination, okay? So you can eat these, I wouldn't worry about them. You can just eat the tomatoes, but do not save seed from those. Save seed from later plants. And in order to maintain genetic diversity, you need to save seed from at least 6 different plants. And of course, you always want to save the seed from your best plants. Now, I've taken some information from the Real Seeds website. Real Seeds, fantastic website, absolutely brilliant, with loads and loads of fabulous information. And on their website, they tell you how to save tomato seeds. And so what you do is you cut a tomato in half, and you scoop out all the juice and seeds from the center of the tomato. Now, it depends on the variety that you're growing as to how many seeds that there are in it. Some have loads and loads of seeds and some only have a few. But you need to ensure that you get a nice little selection of seeds. And you scoop that out and you put it in the bottom of a jar. Now, you leave that in your kitchen on the side for, they say, 3 days. I have to say I usually like to leave it for 4. But you will find that it grows a sort of skin of mold over the top and gets really quite sort of smelly, very unpleasant. However, it's only for 3 or 4 days, so don't worry about it. So once you've left it and you've got your little skin of mold on the top and it's all a bit smelly, you fill up the jar with water and then you vigorously stir it. And then you let it settle and you pour off the top part of the water. Don't get right down to the bottom, just the top part. Add some more water, vigorously stir, same thing again. Let it settle and then pour off more of the liquid. And keep on repeating this until the liquid is actually running clear. And you'll find that the good seeds sink to the bottom and the bad seeds float, and you'll just tip those out with your rubbish. Okay? And then what you want to do is take those seeds and pour them through into a sieve, drain them off, put them on a plate, like a shiny plate, so that they won't actually stick and so that you can get them off the plate again afterwards, and let them dry. And so that is called water winnowing. And you can do the same with cucumber seeds and other wet seeds. So chilies and sweet peppers, they're all capsicum species, and these will cross-pollinate. These are pollinated by insects as well as cross-pollination, but they cross-pollinate very easily. And so what you want to do is isolate the flowers. Now, if you've just got a greenhouse and you've got one type of chili and no sweet peppers, or one type of sweet pepper and no chilies, then you're absolutely fine. You should just be able to save the seeds from those. But if you've got more than, one sweet pepper and one chili pepper, or a few different sorts of chili pepper, then you need to make an isolation bag. Now, this photo here in the center is actually a photo by Sue Stickland. And what she does is actually uses the cellophane bags that bread comes in with lots of tiny little holes in. And she pops it over a branch of the chili pepper and then ties it round the stem. I personally like to use fleece or very, very fine net and I sew a little bag up, and then I put that bag over the branch and tie it gently round it with a bit of string. And you do that before the first flowers open, and you leave it on until all the flowers have opened and pollinated and set their first little fruits. Once you've done that, you can take that bag off, and you can see on the left-hand side that this pepper has got a little bit of string around the top of it, and that is marking the fact that this has self-pollinated. And so that is one that you would save seeds from. Again, you of course need to rogue out any plants that are not typical or that are unhealthy, that get diseases or pests really easily. And it's preferable to save seed for a minimum of 5 plants to ensure genetic diversity in your seeds. So obviously you need to start with more plants than that. I would suggest you start with 7 plants to end up with 5 healthy plants that you can save seed from. Now here we have a slightly different kettle of fish. We're talking now about something that has male and female flowers. So this is the squashes, pumpkins, and courgettes. Okay, all of these are the same family and they will cross-pollinate. If you look on the left-hand side, you can see that this is a male flower and it has a long, straight stem with no swelling to indicate a fruit. And on the right-hand side, you can see that this stem is swollen and this is a yellow courgette. Now the seed of this has been taped closed. And so this is taped closed the day before it's due to open. Now, if you're not sure, let the first one open. Just watch it. Careful observation. And then you can ensure that you are right on top of it and you can get the next one done properly. So here on the left, you can see that the male flower has been picked and the petals removed. The sealing has been taken off of the flower, the female flower. The female flower has been opened, and then you just gently rub the center of the male flower over the center of the female flower. And then reseal the flower to ensure that there's no further insects that can get in there. And then mark the fruit, because that flower will fall off soon and you need to have that fruit marked. Check these tiny fruits before you bother to pollinate them to make sure that they are true to type. Any odd shapes, any weirdos, don't bother with them. And actually maybe just rogue out any plants that are bearing on fruit. Ultimately, you want to grow 6 final plants and you want to cross-pollinate between them. Now for me, squashes, I love squashes. I grow little, small squashes. And so growing 6 plants is easy for me. And you want to cross-pollinate between them to ensure that you're getting your genetic diversity. So between plants of the same species, you cross-pollinate them. So you take a male flower from one plant and a female flower from another plant. Once these have pollinated and grown and it come the end of the summer, you let them fully ripen outside and then you pick them and you put them in your greenhouse or on a windowsill for another month at least before you harvest your seeds. Really though, you can wait until you want to eat them. And when you eat them, what you want to do is be very careful when you cut them open. And if you do damage any seeds, even if it's a tiny little nick, throw them away. You don't want to save them. Only save really sound seeds. Scoop them out, wash them. These are not quite such a process as the tomatoes, but similar to the tomatoes. You wash all the gunk off and then dry the seeds. So winnowing your seeds. When you look on the left-hand side, these are beans. When the beans are dry, you just pop the pods open and save the beans. The center is lettuce. You can see that these have got fluffy seed heads. So what you want to do is take the seed heads and rub them between your hands to get off as much fluff as possible. And on the right-hand side, there's a picture of some calendula seed that was sent to the seed library. And this is actually, you can see that there is the seed as well as the seed capsules from the calendula that were all sent together. And so I just sort of sat down, put some good music on, and picked out on the left-hand side is the seed capsules, on the right-hand side is the seed, and at the top at the back is the mix that I'm moving them out from. So I'm physically separating out the seeds. This is a really good thing to do, to actually separate the seed from any plant material, because the plant material can harbour pests and diseases, and so you want to ensure that the seed is clean. Wind winnowing. Unfortunately, I did this last year, didn't take any photos, should have taken a video, didn't do it, but never mind. This is a little picture that I've taken from the internet, and you can see that the wind blows away the husk and leaves the seeds. But with the Aztec broccoli, the small dry seeds, I took the seed heads and then I held them over a bucket and I rubbed them between my hands. And the seeds and some chaff fell down into the bucket. I wasn't sort of absolutely desperate to get every seed because I had lots, okay? So the old seed heads were then put into the compost heap. And then you rub the seeds in the container until you're rubbing off the little bits of chaff that are around the seeds. And then on a breezy day, I sit outside and I just take a little handful of seeds between my hands like that and rub. And you rub off the chaff and the seed falls back down into the bucket. Hold it just above the bucket. You don't want to hold it too high or the wind will blow the seed away. But the seed is a lot heavier than the chaff, and so the wind blows the chaff away and the heavier seed falls back into the bucket. And you can just keep on doing that. Now I did that with my seed last year, and the final seed, the size of the final seed was about a sixth of the volume of the seed and the chaff. So you can see that it's really worthwhile separating this out. And this is really important, drying your seed, okay? You can just dry your seed on the side. Don't heat your seed to dry it, just dry it on the side and put it in a paper bag and leave it over the winter. But that's really like your seed is going to sleep. And what you want to do is put your seed into hibernation. And the way you do that is to use a desiccant. And a desiccant could be silica gel. And if you do use silica gel, you want 1 part seed to 3 parts silica gel by weight. Or you can use rice. And you take the rice and you dry it in the oven. So you just spread a thin layer on a baking tray, pop it in an oven at about 100 degrees for about 3/4 of an hour, half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, to really dry it out. And then immediately you take it out of the oven, put it in an airtight jar and put a lid on. And then leave it to cool. It must be completely cool before you put any seeds in it. Put your seeds in a pop sock or some small container and then pop them in on top of your rice or your silica gel and leave them for a couple of weeks to dry properly. And then you can take those seeds and you can store them in an airtight container. I use jars because I'm a non-plastic person, but you can use those little plastic bags with the pressed together bit around on the end, you know, airtight. But if your seed is only dried by the air, in the air, then you must not store it in an airtight container because it is likely to go mouldy. You can get indicator silica gel here. You can see a little bag, a little net bag with some beans in. And on the left-hand side, the beans have just been put in. And as the silica gel absorbs the water from the beans, it turns a darker colour. And then you can, once the beans are dry, you can put your beans somewhere else and re-dry that silica gel or re-dry your rice ready for the next lot of seeds. Health and safety. You are the only person that can look after your health and safety. Nobody else is going to do it for you. You've got to do it. Wear a dust mask when you're harvesting or cleaning dry seeds. Parsnips, I'm including parsnips here. We haven't talked about parsnips because they're a biennial and they'll be part of a different course. But the seeds are truly irritant. So wear gloves and long sleeves when you are harvesting parsnip seeds. Wear tough gloves for stripping seed heads and pods. You can actually rip through a lightweight glove really easily and cut yourself. So wear tough gloves. Wear rubber gloves for cutting and scraping out any acid fruit that you're cleaning. And if you're doing chilies, wear gloves, masks, and eye protection. And if you're using lightweight gloves, like medical type gloves, you might well find that they'll only last about 15-20 minutes if you're doing lots. I know in real seeds, when they're doing whole batches, they often change their gloves every 15 minutes because the chili actually starts to eat a hole in the gloves. So this is a quick recap. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm sort of charging on a bit to make sure that we do okay here for time. Grow tall plants between your crops of the same species to reduce isolation distances. Grow plants in a block and take only the seeds from the plants in the middle of the block. You can eat the seeds, if they're beans, for instance, from the outside, but only save the seeds from the middle. Grow more plants than you need to ensure that you've got enough to allow for roguing and then still give you enough for genetic diversity. Ensure that the fruit or seed head is very ripe before harvesting. If weather is an issue, you can, as it often is in Wales, harvest the whole plant and hang it up to dry in an airy place. Could be a greenhouse, could be a shed, but an airy place. Start your seeds early to allow for a long enough growing season on a windowsill, in a propagator, in a greenhouse, just something that starts them early. And you can grow just one variety to avoid cross-pollination rather than worry about isolation distances if you're concerned. So just grow one variety of pea, and then you'll be fine. It's not a problem. Know your site and know what grows in the surrounding area. So if you're growing peas and you're next to a field where they're growing field peas, of course that's going to be an issue. So just be aware of what's growing around you. Harvest dry seeds on a dry day. Wait till at least midday so that the dew is evaporated and your seeds are the driest they're going to be. And of course, keep everything well labelled at every stage. I guarantee you will forget. Guilty, we're all guilty of this one, So label. This is really important. So resources. If you have a problem, you're not quite sure of something, do some research, ask somebody. Have a look in a book. This is a fantastic book. This book is my go-to reference book. It's a book called Back Garden Seed Saving by Sue Stickland. She was the lady I was talking about earlier from the Heritage Seed Library. And she is such a knowledgeable woman, absolutely fabulous. And this book has got so much information in it, definitely worth getting. A wonderful, wonderful book. The Real Seeds website, not only do you get good seeds, but there's loads of information on seed saving. And this information is for the public arena. They actually say, as long as you don't sell it, you can give it to anybody, you can tell anybody, this information is for sharing. You're just not allowed to sell it. You have to give it away. They give it to you, you give it to other people. Now, there's lots of information on the internet, but do cross-reference this information to ensure its validity. You're never sure about the validity of information. Anybody can post anything on the internet, it doesn't have to be true. So always cross-reference it before you actually believe it. Now, one of the things that the Incredible Seed Library is doing is setting up seed guardians, okay? So there's a number of reasons to do this. We can share the workload of seed saving by playing a small and vital part each. If you become a seed guardian for one or two different varieties, now I know some people who are saving one particular variety, and they're going to save that variety for the seed library. Now, you don't have to save everything. I've got some seeds that I'm bringing on. I'm going to give to somebody else to save, and there's lots of seeds, and they only need to save. They're pea seeds. They only need to save 10 plants and not harvest any of those peas to be able to save all of those peas for seed. Therefore, there will be lots more they can actually eat. So there's, you're not actually saying, oh, I'm not going to be able to eat any of these. Yes, you can, You need to start with seed from a reputable open pollinated seed supplier. This could be Vital Seeds, the Seed Co-op, Real Seeds. There are a lot of really good seed companies out there. The Heritage Seed Library, if you're a member of Garden Organic. But start with a really reputable open pollinated seed supplier. And I would ask if any of you do want to become a seed guardian, and please do, it's fun and easy, and it's brilliant because you're sharing your seeds with other people, then register the type and variety of seeds that you're saving with the Incredible Seed Library. You can email me, you can send us a message on Facebook, contact us anywhere you want, and this will just help us to plan what the Seed Library can offer. Now, we're also talking about sharing seeds with other Welsh seed libraries. So this will enable us to share with confidence. And seed saved by a seed guardian will be marked in the seed list and will give members more confidence too. And over the years, the seed that you save, if you save the same seed every year, it will become adapted to your local growing conditions. Always save the best seed and it will become adapted. And finally, further courses. This course looked at saving easy annual veg, okay? And we'll be offering another course later in the year, and it will be looking at biannuals in more detail. And we will also be looking at isolation cages, adding pollinating insects, inbreeding depression and how to avoid it, recapping on isolation distances, and if anybody has any specific requests, then please feel free to contact with me to have these included. Now, I've taken all your email details and I've added them to the Incredible Seed Library email list. Well, I haven't yet. I'm going to do that before tomorrow when I email all this information out to everybody. Okay. And if you would rather not be included in that, please put a little note in the chat now, or email me and I will ensure that your email details are not included. But I think most people want their email details included so that they can get the links and the background information. And these details will be used to send details of future courses and also how to, a little handout on how to dry your seeds. So loads of good information coming your way if you're interested. This email list is used for nothing else apart from the Incredible Seed Library. So don't worry, you're not going to get spammed or anything like that. It is purely for the Incredible Seed Library. And now I'd just like to open up for any questions. Okay. So has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask?
I think you did quite well covering it all.
I was on a bit of a roll there.
You're doing good.
Okay, so you all feel that you've had everything covered. You're happy with what you heard, yeah? Yeah, well, I'll take that as a yes then.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about if you've got a small garden and you're only growing like 4 or 5 of each variety, is that an issue?
Okay, so if you have a small garden, do you remember when we talked about lettuce? We said that you needed to save the seed from 3 to 5 plants. Okay, so if you save the seed from 5, lettuce plants, you're still within the genetic diversity, so you're fine. With peas, you need to save from 10 plants. But actually, you normally grow a row of peas, don't you? More than 10 plants. And so if you just put 10 plants aside purely for saving seed, then all the rest of the row you can eat. But you should actually separate those 10 plants out and grow and have just some just for growing seed and some for eating. But you can see there are some things, even in a small garden, there are some things that you can save the seed from. So please do, and please become a seed guardian.
I will.
Are any more questions?
One of the questions for me, when will you know to harvest particular varieties? Is there certain, you said about doing it on sort of dry days at certain times, but because they all kind of they're sort of turn into seed at various times, aren't they? So how long do you leave them for?
Okay, so for instance, I'll give you some for instances. Often you need to harvest seeds 2 or 3 times during the seeding period, okay? So with lettuce, when they go fluffy and they're really dry, you just pick off the fluffy dry ones, put them in a paper bag and leave the rest that have not gone fluffy, and then harvest those in another few days' time or a week's time. With peas, for instance, when the pod is dry and rattly, it's ready to harvest. If some of the pods are not dry and rattly, just harvest the dry and rattly ones. They have to rattle. So that's, do you know what I mean? It's like there are little tells for every sort of seed. Tomatoes, just let the tomato get really ripe. You know, not so ripe it's rotten, but really, really ripe. And then you can save the seeds and do your wet winnowing from really ripe. Don't use them when they've got little green shoulders still, when they're really, really ripe. When you're saving the seed from squashes or, courgettes or, well, I'll do courgettes and cucumbers in a minute, seed from squashes or pumpkins, then of course you just leave them till you want to eat them. And then when you're ready to eat them, when they're, sometime in the middle of the winter, that's when you actually open up them and then harvest the seeds from the center. With cucumbers, you need to leave them way, way, way past the time when you would actually normally eat them, okay? So that they go frequently yellow. They're a sort of yellow, instead of being green or white or whatever color they normally are, they go yellow and they get much fatter and bigger. I'm sure we've all left the odd cucumber hiding down the back of a plant somewhere and oh God, look at this, like that, And when you do actually cut those open, you can see that the seed is really like full of jelly and huge. Leave it a really, really long time, and that's when cucumbers are ready. And then you wet winnow those seeds, just like the tomatoes that we talked about.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Please do consider becoming a seed guardian. It would be lovely if you contacted me, and if you are growing anything from a reputable open pollinated seed supplier already, that would be great. Or we can, we can have a discussion about it, see if there's anything that you would like to grow. I've got some lettuce seedlings that I'm bringing on. I've got spares. I've already given Marie some peas. We have some things that are, ready to roll. So if anybody wants anything, then please do get in touch with me.
Can I ask where the list is again? Because you said it was at the start of the Facebook page, yeah?
That's right. If you go onto the Facebook page, there is a pinned post at the top of the Facebook page. And it kind of like looks, there's a bit of information about this is updated on a regular basis and that sort of thing. And then it says see more. And you click on the see more, and then you get this huge list of seeds. We've got loads and loads of seeds, okay? And actually now is a really good time to be thinking about getting some seeds of oriental vegetables, because they're much better sown after midsummer. So there are some things that you need to sow later in the year so that they don't bolt too early. So, you know, have a little look and see. Huge list there, huge.
Okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to stop this recording now.